Hey guys, welcome to my first show on Springbok Rugby, Springbok team selection. I'm going to do a couple of shows all in a row. On this first week I'm going to talk about the front three, so number 1, 2 and 3. So it's the two props and the hooker. Next one will be 2 and the lock pairing. The next show will be on the back three. Then I'll look at the half-back pairing, so it's obviously the 9 and 10. I'll look at the centre pairing, and then I'll look at the back three so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shows. But this first one I'm going to focus in on the front row. Obviously with the mind of having our next big international playing against England, and obviously I think England have got obviously Dan Cole at tight head, they've got Jamie George at hooker, and Mako Vunipola at loose head. The Dan Cole. Yeah, that sounds about right. So I'm trying to look at what would be opposing them. So obviously we've got Dan Cole at tight head. So who are our loose head props? So obviously we've got the two loose head props is Tendai, Matawarira. So that's obviously the Beast, and Stephen Kitsoff. I think both South African props are probably better than Dan Cole. I think the Beast brings a world of experience, and Stephen Kitsoff brings a lot of power. I look at the pairing, and I think it's very, very good. I'd say that when the Beast eventually imparts his knowledge on Stephen will have that technique and he'll have the power. And so I think going up to 2019, I still think the Beast should be our number 1 loose head choice. But after the Rugby World Cup, then obviously Stephen should take over from there. Then we're looking at look at the other side of the front row. So on the loose head side for England, we've got Mako Vunipola. I think he plays really, really well. I've seen him play for Saracens. I've seen him play for England. Very, very good. Very, very dynamic. And I always look at the front row and I say, you know, oh, they're great ball carriers, or they're all this. But the first thing they need to do is obviously have a solid scrum. That's their first job. Everything else is a bonus. The hook is a fairly specialised kind of position, and most hookers are real game players. But so obviously got Mako Vunipola on the England side. So who do we have on the South African side at tight head? Tight head's been quite a difficult position to fill in South Africa. We had great tight head props, and now there seems to be a lot of injuries. Connie Oosthuizen's being injured. I've got Frans Malherbe. I think he's back. I'm not 100% sure, but I think his replacement Wilco Louw is excellent. I think he's slowly started improving. 130 kilograms, very, very low centre of gravity. I think he's the prop to watch going forward in that position. But then I start thinking internationally, and I really like Vincent Koch. I see him play for Saracens all the time, and I think he's world class. I think he has taken the step up to Springbok level. I think he brings something extra. I think Wilco Louw's excellent scrummager. I don't know if he's such a dynamic ball carrier. I know that Vincent Koch is an excellent scrummager and he's a great ball carrier. But I always try to look at positions and I think, what's the first choice and what's the second choice? So if I look at on the loose head, I've got Tendai, then Stephen. Done. I look at on the tight head side, Frans Malherbe, Wilco Louw. I think those are probably the two best. Stephen Koch is another one. There's Ruan Dreyer. I think Ruan Dreyer's technique is he just seems to overextend himself, and I think after 2 years you have to have figured that out. And I think the international tight heads or loose heads are figuring that out. How to pull back a little bit, get him to overextend. Done. Connie Oosthuizen is injured at the moment. I don't know when he's going to be coming back. He's pretty rock solid. Thomas du Toit was also another good choice. But the problem with the tight head is there's just too many choices. We just don't know which direction to go. If I had to put a name down, I'd probably go with Wilco Louw. At a push, then I'd go for Vincent Koch. Then we come to obviously the number 2 position, which is probably obviously the first part of the spine of the team. And I look at the England side. We've got Jamie George, excellent number 2. But obviously we've got Malcolm Marx on the other side, a very, very dynamic player, great fetcher, very, very good counteracting, good ball carrier, good offloader, good at the scrum. Only thing that's a bit of a problem is a bit of the line out throwing, but that seems to have improved drastically, and I think he's our top. But if I try to look at who I think is probably the best at the moment on their various positions, we've got Makavanapola at loosehead, we've got Dane Coles at number 2, and we've got Tide Furlong from Ireland at number 3. And I think if I took like for like, I think Tendai, Malcolm and Wilco, they can go up against that kind of front row. So yeah, I think from a front row point of view, we're pretty blessed with some very, very good talent. I think tight head we need to really work on. Loose head sorted, and I think hooker sorted. I think the problem with Malcolm Marx is who's the next hooker in line. You know, if I look at most other Super Rugby franchises and I look at all the other sides, there's always another player that can fill in that spot. And with Malcolm, there's very, very few players that fill in that spot. We've obviously got Bungi Bunani Nambi, who's another one. Akafandamava, who I've really enjoyed watching playing this year. But who's next? It's a tough one. It really is a tough one. But if I try to look at, obviously, you can only have 23 people in a match day squad. You normally have a complete replacement for your front row, so there'd have to be a second hooker. Hooker can't play the full game. Everyone knows that. Even New Zealand, they replace their hooker, they scrum off, they fly off at 60 minutes, and then they bring in the impact players at things. So we've obviously got to start looking at that kind of mold and thinking, okay, who's the next in line? Who can actually fill in that position and bring in that impact? I know Stephen Kitsoff can bring in that impact. I know Vincent Koch would bring in that impact. But who can bring in the impact for Malcolm? And you need someone of as good or just as good of caliber. But yeah, that's my first show on. I think is a decent front row. My next show will be on the lock pairing. But yeah, tell me who you think. Who do you think would be better? Maybe I've chosen the wrong players completely. Maybe I've got completely off the ball. But I think from a front row point of view, South Africa we're pretty sorted. But if you like my show, please give me a thumbs up and please share with as many people as you can. I'd really enjoy that. But yeah, stay tuned and thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye bye.